Hello and welcome to Atlantic Debrief, the Atlantic Council's Europe Center internet show and podcast on most pressing issues impacting transatlantic relations today. My name is Luka Ignac and I'm a program assistant with the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. And our guest today is Katerina Sokou, a non-resident senior fellow with Europe Center, a Theodore Columbus fellow in Greek-American relations with Eliamet, and a Washington, D.C. correspondent for Greek daily newspaper Katerini. Katerina, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Luka.
Prime Minister Mitsotakis' New Democracy won May 21st round of elections with a 20-point lead over the main opposition party Syriza, a margin Greece has not seen since 1970s. However, the government dissolved the parliament on the first day in session as it fell short of the majority needed to rule alone. The second round of Greek parliamentary elections took place just yesterday, with a center-right New Democracy Party winning over 40% of the vote and securing Prime Minister Mitsotakis' second term in office. Katerina, I want to jump straight right in and get your thoughts and reactions on the elections and the implications for Europe and transatlantic relations more broadly. Katerina, tell us where are we now, just 24 hours after the polls closed, and what are the key political cleavages that were driving the voters to the polls just yesterday?
Yes, so as we speak, Kyriakos Mitsotakis has been sworn in as Prime Minister and is announcing his new government. So the whole process has been very swift. This election clearly produced a clear win for a New Democracy and its president, who now has a comfortable 158-seat majority to implement his program and is the dominant player in the Greek political landscape. Now, the electorate gave him a clear mandate by more, as you mentioned, than 40% of the vote to deliver on his promises for stability, reforming the Greek state and driving the economy forward. It is worth noting that, as you mentioned, this is double what the second party Syriza received. And also noteworthy is the fact that the opposition is split among 7 parties that then also entered parliament together with New Democracy. 3 of them are far-right ones, and a couple of dozen MPs are previously unknown. Now, as regards the political cleavages that were driving voters, the parties tried to set the terms between business-friendly reforms that drive private investment on the part of New Democracy versus state-supported jobs and growth on the part of Syriza, coupled with what taxes to cut. But what really drove the electorate was a more pragmatic concern of who can deliver better governance and social cohesion. And related to that was dealing with the inflation and the higher cost of living that the Greeks have been experiencing. And in that, coupled to that, also what taxes to lower and how much to raise minimum wage. On foreign policy, there were not really many cleavages, at least among the major parties, between New Democracy and the center-left. But there is a challenge, as we see, from a nativist, nationalistic approach of the 3 smaller far-right parties that have just entered parliament.
That's absolutely fascinating, and I think it's a very curious outcome of the elections, especially considering the recent changes in the Greek electoral system. But before we delve into those, can you comment a little bit about on sort of the performance of the 2 main candidates, of very strong personalities and 2 oftentimes described as charismatic leaders, Mitsotakis and Tsipras?
Yes, so Mitsotakis has led a very successful campaign. He focused on a positive message. He addressed the issues that seem to most concern the electorate, namely the economy, and managed to mobilize his party in a way that even with high abstention rate, as we saw in this recent election, clearly gave him the lead as high almost as the previous election. Now, on his part, Tsipras, the Syriza leader, took the responsibility last night for the disappointing result. His opposition was at times extreme in its rhetoric, especially some of the comparisons he made to authoritarian regimes, and at times underwhelming in its delivery. This also has to do with the fact that the party was not as well organized and did not have a consistent message on its governing proposition, even about some of its key policies. So that really had an effect on Syriza and the Syriza performance. And we've seen that Tsipras has actually said that he will reclaim the presidency of the party, but he will put that into the test. So his leadership is up for grabs. I don't expect that he will lose it, but he's still taking responsibility for the defeat. He will get the confirmation of his party before he can continue being the leader.
So considering the strong performance of the New Democracy and as you said, the relatively weak performance of the main opposition party, Syriza, what do you think are the implications of these elections for the future of Greek democracy, considering the weak performance of the opposition and a very strong performance of Prime Minister Mitsotakis' New Democracy?
That will be the main challenge for the government, the new government that will be running against itself. And the opposition is weakened, is split. It will take some time for them to regroup, especially in the Syriza party. PASOK, the third party, made a clear good progress in their results, but still at 11% of the vote, they're not significant enough to play the role of a strong opposition. So it will take some time for the parties to regroup of the opposition, and at the same time, the government will have to step up its game and produce the results and deliver on the promises it has made. While at the same time, civil society, the role of the press, become even more important in providing the checks and balances that right now the country needs. And of course, the opposition will also have to step up its game and produce the quality of of its role at the right level. And at the same time, I should also say that the fact that we have three new parties that of the far right that are quite unknown is a challenge. The Spartiates, the case of Spartiates, one of the parties that got almost 5% of the vote, that did not exist as the party in the first elections, and still managed to enter parliament in the second ones with a nativist and nationalistic rhetoric, and importantly with the support of a neo-Nazi convict that used to lead the Golden Dawn party and is now in jail. So clearly this new parliament will present unique challenges in its day-to-day running and the quality of the debate there. And this is something that the president of the Republic, actually of the Hellenic Republic, just mentioned a bit earlier today, admitting that there will be great challenges in managing this new parliament. And even though it doesn't really result in any kind of challenge for what the government will want to do, at the same time, it will produce some interesting moments and colorful moments, and hopefully will stay there and not go into dubious or other situations in the Greek parliament that are particularly challenging for the Greek democracy.
You gave us a little bit of a preview of sort of these recent changes and how they affected the sort of the landscape of the Greek electoral system, but also the parliament. Can you explain to us a little bit about what are some of these recent changes that were applied in this round of the elections, or in specifically with the second round of the elections that took place just yesterday? Can we say that sort of the Greek political landscape has evolved since the first round of the elections, and what sort of the implication? What are the implications that these changes had on the second round?
So the second elections took place under a different electoral system. The first ones were with proportional representation. I would call this a one-off, in the sense that it was the previous Syriza government who implemented this change, and then the previous New Democracy government again changed the electoral law, so that the new elections, the second elections that we just had, were under a system that actually promotes the first party, so that it can make and create a majority government. So that's what happened between the first and the second round. The second round is the one that I would imagine will end is will stay on for the predictable future. If anything, the proportional representation system that didn't produce a result in the first elections showed its limits. It actually didn't do any favors to the Syriza party, who brought it into law. And after the eight-party parliament that was just created, I think it's fair to say that the new system of enhanced majority to the first party will continue for some time. What does this mean for the strength of the government? That we will continue most probably in the same way with majority governments and without bigger coalitions like we see in other European countries.
It's very interesting. I want to go back to sort of the outcome of the election, some of the announcements that the Prime Minister, now the newly elected and Prime Minister Mitsotakis has, or newly re-elected Prime Minister Mitsotakis has mentioned in his speech last night. What are some of the implications? What are his plans and the announcements he made for in terms of Greek domestic policies and economic stability following sort of a period of economic growth that, of course, was preceded by an economic crisis in Greece?
So key to the Prime Minister's agenda is for the country to return to investment grade in its credit worthiness. This relates, of course, with increased investment that he expects to come into Greece, and with his promise of delivering higher economic growth and better and more jobs for the Greek people. So this is something that is key, and it relates, of course, also to the promised reforms that he has suggested will be prioritized in the fields of healthcare system, justice, education, continuing the digital transformation of the Greek state to reduce its bureaucracy, provide better services. Now, if one of these areas that also was added quite recently as a key point in the campaign was the cost of life crisis. Of course, between the energy crisis and the inflation that is running high, even though not as high as in other Eurozone countries, it is true that this has become a key issue for the average Greek citizen, and this is something that the new government will have to deal with. There have been, one of the cleavages, as we were saying earlier, of the election was about the quality of the democracy in Greece and the justice and how this is being implemented. So this will be a focus and a point where the government will need to show its determination and strength, and will be checked by civil society and the press going forward, and hopefully soon by the opposition as well, once they go through this democratic process within their own party of deciding again their leadership. Now, the challenge going forward for the government will also be living up to its promises of efficiency and managing future crises, be it wildfires, migration pressures that, as we saw recently, they're very, very eminent and at times devastating to life at sea, or any failings in the Greek public administration and the state, such as the ones that contributed to the horrific train accident last March.
Of course. And you sort of started touching on it with these sort of big cleavages that have driven some of the voters to the polls and have influenced their opinions. But what do you think this election means for the future of Greek relations with Europe and in general, sort of with Greek relations with the U.S. and transatlantic relations more broadly, as we have sort of the continuation of the Mitsotakis' government and, continuing approach towards migration, continuing approach towards economy that we have seen so far?
Now, it is expected that Greece, under the new government of Kyriakos Mitsotakis, will continue to strengthen its strategic bilateral ties with the United States and, of course, its role within the European Union. But also its greater engagement, I would say, in the Southeastern Europe, the Eastern Mediterranean, and beyond, in the Middle East. Prime Minister Mitsotakis will also try to make a fresh start with the also recently re-elected Turkish leader, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and engage on a senior level with Turkey to improve communication channels and frankly use the goodwill that was created by the so-called earthquake diplomacy earlier this spring to sustain the recently reduced tensions in the Aegean Sea.
Katerina, thank you so much for helping us understand the new political landscape after the extraordinary parliamentary elections on June 25th in Greece.